next on the panel. That is a water resource that we may want to change how we define floods. We change it from being a flood disaster to a water resource, which we definitely very much need. At this point, I want to inform our viewers who are following us on our social media platforms that we are still live and you can participate, you can ask questions, you can comment on the topics, because climate change and we are one. We suffer the same, and so we need to provide solutions for all of us together. I want us to give a big clap to this panelist. I know you still have much more to tell us, but we appreciate, we'll create more time. Thank you very much. As we usher in the next panel, water resources, Ruben, you should be standing up. Betty, Vicky from Water Towers, karibu sana kwa podium. I would want to invite Dr. Michael from the Kenya Red, that you could also give us your experiences. Yes. Lillian from KWS, and I thought Wambua from the Ministry of East African and ASALs. Asante sana, karibuni. It is a full panel, and it's the same debate. So coming from where they have told us, they have informed us that we are now become more aware. We want to say congratulations to the Met Department. We have just been told that they are now very focused and very accurate, which shows that research, science, and the financial investment that has been put there is of benefit to us as Kenyans. We want to thank you very much. We have heard that with those experiences, institutions that have been managing disasters have been able to identify strategies that have been reformational. And with that, we have had NDMA also telling us that we have made a lot of progress. And the impact of damage that was there, for example, comparative to 2009 and the drought of 2022-2023 was not as bad, yet it was the worst. Yeah, so meaning we are making progress, we are moving. So I will give you an opportunity first to introduce yourselves, and second, first introduce yourselves, then in the next round, you will come and tell us what your institution is doing, and really, we will not focus on the problem now. We are moving forward in terms of strategies that we must take, and ways that we can reduce harm, ways that we can mitigate harm, and ways that really Kenyans need to get some education, information sharing, so that we approach this thing with a robust attitudinal change. So karibuni sana, and I think I want to start from the end. Michael Wambua, start introducing yourself, and we'll finish with Ruben, who will then tell us the first question about water resources management. Thank you. Karibu sana, Michael. Very well. Thank you. I think you can be clapping for them, because even in the introduction, there is information that they're giving us that you did not know. For example, did you know that we have within government humanitarian aid, or you only think that it is Red Cross that gives humanitarian aid in Kenya? So let's be very grateful, and as we continue sharing. Lillian?
project was conceived by the Kenya government as a result of the presence, the long presence of refugees in Kenya. For 30 years, Kenya has hosted refugees, especially in the counties of Garissa, Wajir, and Turkana. We have the Dadaab refugee camps, the Kakuma refugee camps. All these are brought in several refugees into this, which have actually stressed some of the socio-economic resources around those spots. And the Kenya government, the K-Dr. DIP, have been addressing the host communities, because as a result of the presence of these refugees, a lot of demand has been made on the environment with respect to things like the livestock, water sources, even wood, fuel, and so on. And sometimes in the past, this has actually brought in some tensions even between the refugees themselves and the host communities. So in the past, we've therefore come to address that gap, and we did this through what is an approach called the community-driven development, where we have empowered the communities to be in the driving seat of the development. We have also done this by providing skills to the community, where they have been able to do a lot of sustainable flood management through a number of activities. For example, we have had establishment of wood rods, trees, agroforestry in those rods, and we have also done a lot of grass reseeding to improve on the fodder in these areas. We've also done, in addition to that, we have also provided alternative sources of wood fuel through solarization, both at the household level and at the community level. We also have provided a number of other social amenities like schools, either rehabilitation or expanding hospitals, the drilling of boreholes, establishment of water pans, mainly desilting. After some time, after the floods, these water pans have been silted, so we've supported communities to do the desilting of this, among several other approaches. And the other approach that the project has used is what we call the labor-intensive public works, where the communities have been supported to conduct some of these activities in the community land. And they get, by doing so, they get some a bit of some cash transfers to improve on their livelihood. At the same time, as to motivate them to do the environmental conservation. So we've also provided some funded groups to conduct some activities in these regions, especially groups which are whose members are vulnerable. These, among others, have actually uplifted the communities to a level that they now feel that they are part of, the government has recognized their, the way they have hosted the refugees in these areas for that long. Thank you very much.
Very good. Makofi. I think that is a very good example of where areas that and populations where it was imagined that they are just requiring humanitarian aid become transformational, and they even start contributing to the economy and contributing even to the issues that are affecting us, like climate change. So I think, true to the word, Kenya Dr. Deep, you have treated problems in the society and just have proved that it is possible that a community can change its attitude and they can be the opposite of dependency to reliance. Thank you very much. Dr. Richard, karibu.
Dr. Michael.
Michael.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Michael Ayabe, and I work for the Kenya Red Cross Society. I think I would say, in summary, disaster management is our business. We go all round. The various parts of that cycle. And I would start, of course, being an agency that is created by Parliament, actually CAP 256 laws of Kenya. We're auxiliary to national and county governments. And therefore, the role that we play really is to support government whenever we are needed in areas of disaster management and relief. But we've broken down this over time in how we approach it. Of course, what we are known for is response. Somebody hears Kenya Red Cross and just thinks they're just waiting for disasters to happen, and then they will go. But that is not the case. There are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes before you can get there. One is we engage a lot of volunteers. The Red Cross itself does not have a big number of staff. Very lean. We're talking about 200,000 volunteers who are behind the small team. And when you see them out there, the backbone is really our volunteers. Whenever something happens, and these volunteers are at the community, at the village. So when something happens, once they know whom they can call, that is the first action of response. They would be able to call a Red Cross staff or a Red Cross emergency center, and that call is picked as part of the response. And that's why in some cases we will know probably before many have known, but it's because of that person at the community level. So we do a lot on search and rescue, which is prepare these volunteers by training them in various aspects, including the aqua rescue team that we saw recently. Those were just volunteers trained in aqua rescue earlier. And I want to thank the KMD. Lots of the information that we use, for us, that is the other reference point that we always look at. We want to plan something and we ask, and what does the KMD say? In fact, if they don't release the information, sometimes we might get stuck, because what will you plan with? So it's been very credible source. So we do search and rescue, prepare volunteers to be able to respond across the country, being present in 47 counties and working with county commissioners, deputy county commissioners, and the chiefs. That ensures that at least we can be able to do something else whenever it happens. We also have an emergency operations center that runs on 24-hour basis. So every other time, being able to collect information. If if at this point you see someone falling from a point, an accident has occurred, people have just fallen into water, a vessel has collapsed. The EOC uses a number 199 and 1199, and they will be able to transmit that information to the police or the local Red Cross office to take action and then coordinate with others. So beside the search and rescue, which we also do, is that we also help in providing relief based on the various incidents that happen. So it could be floods, could be these other types of disasters that cause displacements. We provide shelter. We also do sometimes psychosocial support. Maybe some of the responses that's just needed is to give people assurance. We also do health programs and usually both long-term and in emergency. So we support in some cases in where we need to reach very difficult areas, even with immunization programs. We do water and sanitation, and again, mostly in emergency and in building resilience where it's difficult for people to go. So luckily, we have been have had that acceptance to various communities, and therefore, even in very difficult areas, we've still been able to have access. And then we also provide services in the refugee camps, both in Kakuma and Dadaab, especially health, but also turning them into people who can be self-reliant on areas of livelihood. We have a research center that we use a lot of the information we also gather to inform our future programming, and the center is the International Center for Humanitarian Affairs, just to collect that. We run a training school that we try and bring in a lot of information, working with Microsoft and many other organizations, just to find some new solutions to the challenges that we have. We train the paramedics, who you find now, at least we try and bring professionals into the sector of providing emergency services. So helping those who have been displaced by disasters, whenever and wherever it happens, among many others. I think if I explain whatever happens, as I said, behind the cameras, it's quite a lot, but that is generally what we do. Of course, I think I forgot a very important part, which is about what we do today. The issues of climate change and basing it ourselves on the livelihoods. Most of the things that have happened now due to climate change has affected definitely the livelihoods of people. And he mentioned about the drought that was there, 5 failed seasons. And now we got into floods immediately. So many of the families now have been displaced, and whenever they get this displacement, then how are they going to cope? So every other time when we are not responding, we are helping the communities to build resilience, explore better ways of probably keeping livestock, introducing the people to be able to plant their own pasture and plan how they can use pasture. Tree planting, we actually were given a very big target by the president, I think doing about 10 million trees as the 15 billion is being done. Mm-hmm. So we're also using and engaging our 200 volunteers across the country to be able to reach that number. And we're doing what we call the anticipatory action and mapping areas that the communities know these were the maximum areas that floods would reach, and therefore once the thresholds have been reached, then we are able to work together with the leadership in an area to evacuate these populations. But I must say that the floods we have had this time round, not many of the people who are living today have ever experienced that, and therefore even the thresholds this time round were higher, and that's why the population more affected, the numbers are higher, but I think the knowledge has also gone out there. So in helping some of these people to be able to do that, we work with other partners and send messages, which I will mention later on how we are able to collaborate with other sectors that are not government, but can play do play a very critical role in managing disasters in the country. Thank you.
Very well. I think I can ask a question for others. You mean Kenya Red Cross is a government institution? Or where does Kenya Red Cross get much of its budget?
Interestingly, we are in between. Formulated by an act of parliament as auxiliary to government. So we are not NGO because of the principles of the Red Cross. One of the principles of Red Cross is independence. So that's seen, and I would say we move in. We don't seek authorization. It is we move in and provide assistance because then that is what the mandate provides. Yes, we get support from government. The funding that we get is from other donors, including the Federation or the Association of the Red Cross, which is International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, the partner national societies, so national societies in other countries, and then, of course, regional bodies, including organizations like ECHO, the American BHA, USAID, so quite a number of other people, including individuals within this country who make daily contributions to the work that we do. So really, lots of credit go to also donors who reach us in small and big ways.
Very good. Thank you. I think clap, because that is information we didn't have. Yes, Betty.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again.
Good morning.
My name is Betty Chikorir, and I work for the Kenya Water Towers Agency. I'm also a scholar in the space of climate change, other than being a state corporation under the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, specifically in the State Department of Climate Change and Environment. And I was very happy to see Ressa come before me because that's our mother, the Ministry of Environment. The next natural question everybody asks is what water towers are, because that is the mandate of KWTA. The government has given us the responsibility to coordinate the management of water towers. In very simplistic language, water towers are special ecosystems and forests that are sources of water. So if you think about the Mau Forest Complex, the Aberdares, Mount Kenya, Mount Elgon, I hope I'm close at home. Those forests are elevated landscapes that are sources of water. And the wisdom of government is that these are unique ecosystems that provide us water, well aware that Kenya is a water scarce country. That's what the water experts will tell you. So that's basically about Kenya Water Towers Agency. It was created in 2012 and at the moment has 18 gazetted water towers other than the 5 that I talked about. So how do we run this mandate as KWTA? So we have a rather 3-pronged approach where the first one is to take care of the ecosystems. And one of the things that we do is to rehabilitate those forest ecosystems where we are. We do direct planting, and we have big targets under the 15 billion tree planting campaign, of course. But also, we try and use natural regeneration where it's possible. So that's how you find us involved in fencing some of the really degraded water towers like we have done in Masai Mara. We've set up an electric fence. The aim is to ensure that there's natural regeneration that's happening and also to minimize encroachment. Rather than that, we also sometimes are engaged in the unpopular engagement of reclaiming some of the water towers, like we have done successfully in the Masai Mara of the Mau Forest Complex. So that's what we do in the rehabilitation and restoration front. We are also engaged in protection, by the way. We support a joint enforcement unit, which has servicemen from multi-agency teams, Kenya Forest Service, Kenya Police, name it. So they help to sort of enforce protection activities around dealing with really degraded forest and water tower ecosystems. The other approach that we use is research, because you wouldn't provide proper interventions if you are not sufficiently informed. So we have a department that is preoccupied with research, who tells us what's going on where, in very simplistic language to use here. And the other thing that they also do is to develop ecosystem management plans, so that it guides the interventions that we do. And lastly, which I in the center of our discussion today, is that we have a whole unit that I lead that is in charge with, that is charged with community partnerships and sustainable livelihoods. What we do is not only now protect water towers, but also now deploy other community engagement models that not only now rehabilitate water towers, but also support communities in the areas related to climate change. And I think that is what we centered around our discussions this morning. I'll be able to say much more later. But for now, I could just mention that one of the things that we do in a big way is to support nature-based solutions to improve the socio-economic situation of communities. So you will find us supporting various value chains to improve household income. We have been successful, particularly in deploying interventions around the honey value chain. So we have various communities around this country that have benefited from the interventions of honey production. You will find some of them producing high-value organic honey that they sell locally, and some of them international, using the water tower resource as the natural ecosystem where they produce this honey from. We also have interventions around, I had my colleague talk about pasture. So we've worked with communities in asal areas to exploit the pasture production value chain. We've had communities that we've supported to produce boma roads to use in their dry season, feeding of their livestock, as a way of ensuring that they do not over-depend on the fodder that exists in the water towers. We've also been in the space of supporting the value chains of tamarind and baobab, and so many others that I will not have an opportunity here to describe, but just so to tell you that we help communities to improve their socioeconomics, of course, as a way of incentivizing them to participate in rehabilitation of water towers, but also to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Because like somebody had said, floods, droughts that we have experienced has a way of impacting directly on socioeconomics. People have entirely lost their livelihoods. The other thing that we also do in the unit is centered around renewable energy. So we support communities with clean technologies like biogas, like the use of solar, of course, as a way of ensuring that they don't over-rely on wood fuel, because their over-reliance on wood fuel means that they will visit the water tower, of course, to harvest wood. So we try and do that as well. The other thing that we also do for communities is to support water harvesting technologies. So we've worked with a number of schools and other institutions to provide them with water harvesting technologies. And last but not least is our engagement on environmental education. Our approach is not just specific to climate change, but environmental education as a whole, where we have a program where we engage schools to help learners to practicalize the different aspects of environment. So we support them to set up tree nurseries, to grow trees, and we now have a structured way of delivering this environmental education, because we've put together a guide. It was initially conceptualized as a curriculum, but it's a guide that we use to inculcate environmental consciousness among learners. And of course, one of the big things within it in the modern day reality is climate change, where we endeavor to break the very complex subject of climate change to young learners, show them what it is that they can do, and involve them practically on environmental conservation. Yeah, so that's basically what we do, I think, in the environmental education front, but I'll be able to, I think, expound more moving forward. Thanks very much.
Very good. Clap. And I think in the next session, Betty will tell you that you can actually take part and participate as a Kenyan, because they have a lot of water towers that they have listed and mapped out, and they have also provided opportunities for partnership. Yes, and I do not want to preempt, so that she can explain. And I think also the issue of carbon trading, again, which Environment and NEMA are going to still tell us about, I think there's still an opportunity of carbon trading through the water towers and wetland resources. So thank you very much, Ruben.
Thank you very much, and good morning once again.
Good morning.
My name is Ruben Gesa from Water Resources Authority. I am a hydrologist. Water Resources Authority is a state agency under the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, whose mandate is to regulate the management and use of water resources in the country. We do so that the citizen are accessible to adequate water in terms of the quality and quantity. Then you say, how do we do this? We do this by apportioning the water resources. For all water uses, we apportion, be they surface water or groundwater. So we have a comprehensive water resource monitoring network around the country, within the rivers, and also for groundwater, that we use the data to inform the regulation. So we are saying the decision support in terms of regulation is data-based, and hence the importance of the network. Now, with regard to issues of climate change and what we are experiencing now, the extreme events, our mandate as Water Resources Authority is mitigation. How do we mitigate against the impacts of extreme events? And as has already been said, climate change is already here with us. It was modeled a long time ago, and at that time, we used to think the year 2025, year 2020 is a long time to come. But what was modeled then, we are seeing it now. For example, we have the traditional areas that used to experience a lot of floods, mostly in the Lake Victoria basin, but now we have shifted to other parts of the country. It's like the whole country is flood-prone area. So we have to do something about it. So Water Resources Authority, with regard to mitigation, we normally work close with the KMD, and we have all acknowledged that the forecasts are now spot on. We rely on the data, and also with the data from the water resources, the rivers, the status of the rivers, to issue advisories to the vulnerable communities. And the advisories, as was said, is to tell the communities what to do in the event of floods. So that has been done in the flood-prone areas in Kenya, and now the other new flood-prone areas throughout this season, and the advisories has been used. But then maybe one thing I need to say is that we are saying the flooding that we are experiencing now is as a result of the climate change. Very true. But also the activities. Human activities have also accelerated the impact. Whatever happens in the catchment, whatever happens in the towers, whatever happens in urban areas, accelerate the impacts of climate change. So as an authority, we have to be on top of things. Issues to do with flash floods. You don't monitor such. But then we rely on forecasts and then the current situation, because a flood will occur based on the status of the ground. If it is saturated, we expect all the rain to move as runoff, and that would accelerate the flooding. So that's what we do, but then I would be able to explain more in detail as we go on.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruben. Your colleague tells me that you own all the water. So I do not know whether you also have that position and whether even the flood water is still owned by the Water Resources Authority. You will tell us because it is a resource. I want us to have a second round where now we propose interventions. Is it, what interventions do you see that your institutions are able to make, or interventions even from the other actors who are present here and who are part of the panel? What are the interventions that we can all propose and make as a recommendation in terms of addressing? Because as it is, each of us is doing a different approach, but geared towards one goal of either mitigating damage, creating resilience, and helping us to live better quality lives that are safe in a clean and secure environment. So in terms of interventions, please tell us in your context and in the context of the discussions, what is it that you think are interventions that we can collaboratively adopt so that we can then advise? And I'm thinking that even interventions like for Lillian, you tell us interventions, you said you have safeguards to protect wild animals. Do you also have safeguards to protect us from, I have seen in the recent 2 days, there has been a lion that has been ploughing in the estates. So what interventions, strategies do we foresee? And on the same note, I would want us to also comment on the issue of funding. I know NDMA, you have an experience in terms of funding and issues on coordination. How do we approach these issues going forward? All of us have accepted that we must take action, and the good thing is, and it's a lot of hope, we have the capacity to help ourselves get rid of the extreme impact of climate change. So you are free. You can start with whoever wants to go first. Lillian is already.
Okay, let me.
It's okay.
Okay, let me start first before I forget your question. So recently you saw a lion roaming around Rongai there. So those are some of the effects of climate change. And as Kenya Wildlife Service, we have strategies in place to address such issues. Just to start, before I forget, this toll-free number that you can call 24/7. It's 0800 59 7000. So you can report any human wildlife you lost. 08
247
No.
08
The number is 0800 59 7000. So it
3
doesn't,
zeros.
yeah, it doesn't
Okay.
have. So this number, it's a toll-free line. You can call it 24 hours. So through this number, you can report any human-wildlife conflict incident. And human-wildlife conflict is as a result of climate change. Climate change has really made it worse. And through education and awareness that Kenya Wildlife does, we are able to address issues of human-wildlife conflict. As you know, when there's flooding, for example, the recent floods that we had, it actually displaces wildlife. That's why you find that when these protected areas are flooded, the animals want to go out and look for pasture. And also, during floods, we also have now the opposite. These animals again die in big numbers because now there is no water. And also there is no forage material. So both extremes actually impact on wildlife. And Kenya Wildlife Service has 8 conservation areas. So each of these conservation areas is managed by a senior assistant director. So when we have like this time that we had floods, each of them was tasked to develop a disaster preparedness plan. So in this disaster preparedness plan, you actually map the areas where, through the scientists that we have, you map the areas that are prone to these disasters. You map this, you identify the strategies that you're going to use to control these disasters in case they happen. And through your disaster preparedness plan, the organization is able to fund those activities. Like if you identify that if this happens, then we'll be able to move the staff maybe on high areas, high altitude areas. Then you give a budget. Your disaster preparedness plan is accompanied by a budget that the government, that the organization funds. But we've had incidences where, again, we have wildfires. Wildfires are also made worse by issues of climate change. When you have wildfires, sometimes it actually goes out of our capability to manage. And in those areas, we really collaborate with other institutions. We collaborate with KFS. That's where we collaborate with Kenya Army. So we mobilize all these resources so that we are able to address that particular incident of wildfires. Within KWS ourselves, we also have resources. We have aircraft, we have human resources. So these resources we also share. We also give them out when there's a disaster of a big magnitude. The other intervention that we also use is compensation. So in cases where there's human-wildlife conflict, we try to compensate the community. In cases where there's the human-wildlife conflict leads to death, then we compensate to a maximum amount of 5 million. In cases where there's injury, human injury that occasions permanent disability, we compensate up to 3 million. And in cases where it's just injury, but does not occasion permanent injury, we compensate up to 2 million. And in cases of crop damage, property damage, and predation, we compensate depending on the assessment that has been done. And we only compensate for the wildlife species that are provided for under Annex 4. So if you go to the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act 2013, you go to the Annex 4 or Schedule 4, you will find a list of the animals for which we can be able to compensate. Then the other thing that we really promote as Kenya Wildlife Service is education, because you know we cannot garner the support of community to participate in conservation activities if this community are not aware about the conservation issues. So we really reach out to this community. We do education and awareness through, we have like essay writing competition. There's a year that we had a topic on climate mitigation and adaptation. I don't know, it's 1 or 2 years ago. And we were able to actually leverage on that. And if you have seen the essays that these students write, then those are really good ideas that some of them, even at that point in time, actually informed our policies in terms of climate mitigation. We also reach out to schools through education programs. We have a conservation education curriculum that was developed and we adopted by Kenya Wildlife Service. So we use it to roll out education programs. We also work with the Ministry of Education to mainstream education program into school. So if you see like a science textbook as something on wildlife, teaching children this is a lion, these are carnivores, these are herbivores. So that kind of information, we work very closely with the Ministry of Education so that this information is mainstreamed in the curriculum, in the education curriculum, so that these children can be able to learn about wildlife at a very early age, so that when they are adults, they are able to support us in conservation. So the other thing that we also do, especially during drought, we really we really need to collaborate with other institutions, because we find during drought now, animals really die, and the main reason for this death is not even forage. Sometimes it's about water. So we reach out to other organizations, our partners, so that now we can be able to build boreholes strategically. We can be able to build, to construct water pans that can be able to store water for a long time, so that our wildlife can also be able to be able to receive enough water, and we can be able to cushion them from climate change. In terms of infrastructure, our roads, we also construct climate resilient infrastructure, so that both the people that are in these protected areas and the wildlife can be able to benefit, and it can be able to act as a mitigation towards climate change effects. So as we go on, we'll be able to discuss more about the interventions that we have, and we also have the policies that guide us. We have the session one on wildlife policy 2020. It actually provides for Kenya Wildlife Service to develop interventions towards climate mitigation and adaptation. So along with that, we work as an organization towards mitigating this climate change and having a resilient ecosystem that can be able to withstand climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see Ruben is geared, but I want to read out the questions coming out from our social media handles, so that the respective institutions can start preparing on how to respond. We have a question: how are budget allocations for disaster management and climate adaptation determined? How are the budget allocations for disaster management and climate adaptation determined? And are the current funding levels sufficient? Number two, how does the Kenyan government take part in controlling the upcoming disaster apart from planting trees? So I think Resa, other means of mitigating. Number three, how can Kenya ensure a just transition to a low carbon economy that does not leave anyone behind? How can Kenya allow a just transition to a low carbon economy that does not leave anybody behind? Thank you very much. We'll be responding as we come to the next. Betty, I saw you, Betty, and Ruben. Who wants to go first? We are discussing interventions and areas of collaborations. Yes.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about interventions and area of collaboration with regard to the issue of flood disasters. And specifically, I want to talk about the flood early warnings that we normally do in collaboration with the KMD and other stakeholders. And I want to point out that we have currently 3 modes of flood early warning. One is the comprehensive system whereby we have a network of rainfall monitoring stations and river monitoring stations. And then the data is modeled to give a flood forecast. This one is the only place we have in Kenya currently is in Nzoia River Basin. So there's a comprehensive system that gives a short-term flood forecast and also a medium-term flood forecast. And it has been done with accuracy that can be relied on. This data is relayed to stakeholders through the local FM station, and also an SMS is triggered once a threshold is reached within the Nzoia River. So that is one. Then we have community-based flood early warning system that I would really wish that it could be replicated. This one we have it in the Nyatike area in Migori, the Kucha Migori River. It is a system that was developed some time back, and as WRA, we normally work with communities. We call them Ruwaza. We were able to bring in the upstream communities and the downstream community who are vulnerable to floods. We brought them together, we installed gauges, and we gave the thresholds and lead time, flood lead time, such that they are able to communicate. Once the water level reaches a certain threshold, they are able to communicate with their colleagues downstream to evacuate. Then thirdly, we have, and we are adapting now, WhatsApp groups, WhatsApp forums, whereby we have different stakeholders. We have the professionals, like for Tana, we have the KenGen, we have the Water Resources Authority, we have the administrators, the county government, and also members of the affected communities, where people discuss about the floods, the situation in the river, and likelihood of flooding. So these are interventions that, in my opinion, should be replicated in other flood-prone areas.
Very good.
Then, speaking to the question of mitigation, apart from tree planting, somebody said earlier that the people who have mostly been affected by the floods are people who live or structures that are within the waterways or that are within the riparian buffer. That is very true. And as WRA, routinely, we normally mark the riparians. And we had even given orders in the past for people to stop constructions in certain areas. But of course, you can give orders and not adhered to. But this time, it's unfortunate for them, but the floods themselves. The floods has now come, and it has reclaimed its territory. So many of the people who have been affected, specifically in Nairobi and also the other parts of the country, are people who actually dwell within the flood areas, the riparian areas. And I also need to mention that there's an exercise going on in Nairobi at the moment, clearing the riparian reserve following the presidential order of 2nd May 2024. So that exercise is for the good of Wananchi, because what we saw in Nairobi, we had casualties, we had deaths, so it is only good. And also as a measure, apart from the tree planting that we are saying, is that people would keep off from these dangerous zones, the riparian areas, and let the riparian and the floodplains be floodplains. Because ecologically, floodplains are also important. They should be there, and for a place like Nairobi, it will also beautify the city. If you have river fronts, cleared off dwellings and made green to be green areas, leisure areas, an example of Michuki Park, that is what is envisaged. And this one will also prevent disasters like what we have just had. Thank you.
Very much. Karibu sana. Our Director General has just walked in. You can salute. Yes, we are proceeding. We are live. Yes, Betty?
Thanks very much. It's a very interesting session where we are talking now about interventions and collaborations, which is really what we need to do. Because every time you talk about climate change, people ask you, what can we do? It's here with us. What can I do? So the first thing that I would want to start with is the traditional one that we talk about of tree planting. Unfortunately, when environmentalists started this call in the 80s and 90s, before the effects came, there were all sorts of reactions to it. Climate deniers, they said it wasn't there. And nobody for a long time really thought that we really needed to plant as much trees. Wangari Maathai, I think, was one of the biggest person that we crucified when she was asking us to do what we now see is a necessity. So the natural long-term solution
to climate change from the mitigation front is actually tree planting. And that's why, and I'd want to start by thanking the president, because I have nicknamed him as the climate champion 001. I think before him, not very many people understood climate change for what he has made us now know, even as laymen. So the very first thing that we need to do as a country, as individuals, is to do that very traditional task of just picking a seedling and putting it in the soil. That's the only sure long-term intervention that we have. And that's why you see that the government now, and Resa allowing me, the ministry is now coordinating the planting of 15 billion tree seedlings by 2032 in a space of 10 years. What this means is that annually, we must deliver the planting of 1.5 billion seedlings. Cumulatively, in the 10 years, the government looks to restore and rehabilitate about 10.6 million hectares. I hope I've helped to break it down. I know we keep saying 15B, and you wonder what that is. So 15 billion in 10 years, 1.5 billion every year, January, December. And to the individual, it's been calculated that if you plant 30 seedlings in a year, by 2032 we are there. So it makes it easy, I think. And I hope even those of us now viewing and watching, as we always keep asking, what can we do? Just ensure you plant 30. Divide by 12, how many in a month? We can work the mathematics. Do we now see that it's practical? Because sometimes when the president and the top level government talks about 15B, we start feeling like a David Goliath moment. How can I achieve 15B? Bwana DG, just 30 in your name. Divide by 12, you can do like 3 every month, and there we go. And you know, we say these things and go away and do nothing about it. Wangari Maathai told us that unless you dig that hole, put the seedling, cover with soil, we are just talking. And it will catch up with us like it has caught us just a few months ago. Eh? So the first and the surest that environmentalists tell us is tree planting. Of course, there are the other mitigation interventions, like ensuring we have clean technology in manufacturing, including moving electric and reducing fossil fuel usage in transportation. I'm just digressing into that because there was a question. There's also even the whole household shift of cooking technologies to clean technologies. So it's a myriad of things that we can have another session to discuss. But tree planting, I think, is the surest that all of us can pick up. The second, I think, speaking from a KWTA perspective, is to support communities to have alternative sources of livelihoods. Because most of our livelihoods as a country are climate dependent. If you think about the rural areas, they're climate dependent. So one of the surest way is to scale up nature-based solutions so that we can have communities exploiting natural resources that are around us, but in a sustainable way, so that they also have some form of income, so that they can adapt better to the effects of climate change. We've done that as an organization. We've recorded a lot of success. Like I told you earlier, we now have communities who are producing organic honey, you know. They can even access international markets beyond Kenyan borders. So if we develop these value chains, and this is now where collaborations come in, madam, because as an organization, we can only do so much. I think from our time of inception until now, we've supported communities with about, I think, 3,000 beehives now and processing equipment. But these are solutions that we have tested. They work, but now they require scaling up. So if there are any partners in this room, because you said it's a collaboration, we are saying we have tried and tested methods that can support communities socioeconomically, and all we need now is to scale them up, help them to coexist in a good way, in a sustainable way with the environment. The other one that we cannot run away with are the issues of energy. Because as long as our communities are relying on the traditional energy sources like wood fuel, it means that the trees that we are working hard, Bwana DG, the 30 that you will plant this year, there are chances of them living on are going to be slim. Because my grandmother in the village relies on that tree to do what? To cook. And she must eat, isn't it? Are you going to tell them there's climate change, don't cut and cook? The children have to eat. These are things that mothers worry about every day. So if we now start to think of investing in clean energy sources, and there are multiple ways. We've had now a shift from charcoal to briquettes, for example. Kenya Water Towers has supported some communities to produce briquettes from waste. And as long as it is bio-waste, you can use coconut, you can use wheat straws to generate briquettes, so that you don't have to depend on charcoal and so forth. I think the last one that I'll now talk about is on education. The climate change subject, as you must appreciate, is a very complex scientific subject. And I must own up that some of us who are scientists have done very little to unbundle what this actually is. Because you will hear those of us who are in the scientific world talking about climate change, global warming, greenhouse gases, methane, nitrous oxide, things that are mind-boggling, yeah? There's been very little effort to break down the complex science of climate change, and even now make communities, because, I mean, if we passed this mic around here and ask how many of us know the difference between methane and nitrous oxide and where they come from, and greenhouse gases, very few of us would be able to articulate that. If you thought about our grandmothers and mothers in the village, they have very little understanding of this complex subject, yet the effects are here with us. So one of the areas of collaboration that I see, Madam, is to have a national kind of drive to simplify climate change and contextualize it in a language that people can actually understand. And this could even be having it in our local FM languages. What does climate change mean to Samburu people? Do they have a local name for it? Can they start to have a local name for it? Can they now look at the interventions that they need to do at a local level in their own traditional and local way without necessarily worrying about these big jargons that scientists like myself have to deal with on a daily basis? So that's the other area that I see, because people can only respond when they understand. But now, before we break it down to a level that they can understand, how do we even expect them to respond? Yet most of the discussions we are having here are about response. So I think the first and the surest is to demystify and break down the complex scientific language about climate change to the local language that people can understand so that they can respond. And I must say that there are many ways in which this can be done, and that can also be a discussion in other contexts. Thank you very much.
Very well. I can see Dr. is eager. Proceed.
Thank you. I think I will try build on what colleagues have already mentioned, and one of the things that I look at is, of course, we have that bit that we needed to have done to an extent that we have found ourselves in the middle of this. So I would want to think of how do we handle this from where we are, going back to try and restore nature. And I will start by talking about trying to work on the work, or build on the work that's being done by the KMD. And this is they do a lot of forecast. But now, other experts and in their respective areas, we need to start to change, to break this down into, impact based. Because then they would give the general situation. And now it is up to the sectoral experts to break it down. What does it mean to the education sector? What does it mean to the road sector? And actually break it really to the village, and even for agriculture, we need to see more. Because if they have information, and I will want to take, for example, the path of agriculture. If the forecast is showing that we are in MAM, and they are saying, even with this MAM, the rains are not as good. We don't expect it will be a good season. What do agriculture experts need to tell their farmers? That we will not now plant our traditional crops. And I will want to use maize for a person coming from Rift Valley. We have varieties that are known, 6213, 614, those that take a long time and need a lot of rain. So now these experts need to break it to the local person in the village and tell them, now with this forecast that is given, we can go for this variety. Or this is not the season to be able to do this. So if we are able to help to make more use of this information, it will have more impact. Another point is, even with the forecast that is given by KMD and the early warning that is given also on the rain gauges, I want to say that the number of people that these messages reach is still not what we want. or at least to the level of understanding. At what point have we been able to change the local village person beyond the story of what my colleague mentioned earlier, ngurumo za radi hapa na pale? It's no longer that. It would be, they are able to break it down to what will happen. So how do we make that farmer down there to know that this is what will happen, and they are able to plan appropriately for that? So dissemination of this information, and I want to, this is one of the areas I bring in the collaboration, that the media houses, media stations need to help us as a contribution of passing this early warning message without charges. And I think we have tried. From the Red Cross, we've worked very closely with Safaricom. And when we have this early warning message, of course the message coming from KMD, break it down to the local area, and we cause an SMS to be sent to people who are living within that place. And that is their contribution. They do not charge for that. So can we see others also coming in, including now, like for TV stations, that message running down there saying that this is likely to happen in such and such a place. So this early warning, this is how we can collaborate and have many actors taking in their space from the field that they are able to do this. And thirdly is also that responses may not stop soon. But how are we able also to use the information that comes from the rain gauges and the information that we have on the early warnings, whatever it is, that it has more lead time? Because again, if you tell somebody will have floods in the evening and you want them to move, really? So we need to provide a little bit more lead time, and that is why working with communities who, for example, those who are living in Nandi Hills and those who are living in Nyando, there is almost a lead time of 6 hours. But yet, while it is short time, but if there is good information from the people, then at least we can lose property, but we will not lose people. So this is the message I want to try, that we can be able to get good lead time. Then the other bit is about now changing how we do, like for agriculture. We need to propagate more the message on what types of crops are there that can do better in what season, and we develop a catalog that farmers also can be having this. They don't need to be looking for an expert to do this. If we can develop a catalog, that would be key, and also going for what we used to do as contour farming. It used to help a lot, especially on flood, and even enabling the soil to hold water. Finally, is the remapping of the flood-prone zones. As I said earlier, this one was a bit higher in terms of levels, which gives us a new parameter or a new threshold. We did a mapping with Water Resource Management Authority in area around Nyando and Busia. And this we shared with the community. At least the number of people that got displaced thereafter went down, because everyone knew, they participated, the community participation in the mapping. Then we went marking the high points where a community was saying the water can get here, the water can get here. So we went pegging along that area. So that was an interagency activity that we did sometimes in 2021. And now I propose that then it needs to be redone so that we look at what are the new levels that have been reached, so that we are able to complement our shortcoming as human beings, that we are not able to plan more on something we are not able to imagine, or something we have not had or experienced. One of them, because if I tell you today that you imagine yourself flying out of this room, you may say how. It's not possible because we've never seen it happen. We can't imagine. So same case, some of these emergencies come up and we have no experience or heard about it, and therefore we can use the knowledge that we have also gained. Disasters provide opportunities for learning. So we have learned something from what has happened now, and we need to improve even better.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Daktari. I think let's clap for those interventions. It's just a fact that, yes, we must collaborate. You can hear from their presentations that we are working with this, we are working with this, meaning that we actually must work together. I would want to request NDMA, Mr. Nyakeo, to respond to the question that was raised about budget allocations for disaster management and climate adaptation. How are they determined, and are the current funding levels sufficient? And then I'll give Ressa to respond to the issue of carbon trading. There's also another question that has just come in. I think this one is specific for Tarda. What are some of the strategies that the government is using to implement mitigation against disasters caused by downstream overflows from dams? What are some of the strategies, I can reconstruct this question, the government can implement to mitigate against disasters caused by downstream overflows from dams? Another question, I think this is for you, Mary Kilavi from KMD. What improvements can be made to Kenya's early warning systems to better predict and respond to future disasters? How does the recent flooding even underscore the urgency of implementing robust mitigation measures in Kenya? So I think in that order, in the interest of time, Dr. Nyakeo, and then Ressa from the ministry, and then Mr. Muli from Tarda, and then we'll have one round of closing remarks. Your parting shot that you would want to send out as information. Asante sana.
Sorry, I'm giving you another name because you also gave me another name.
We are game.
Yes. Really, determination of budgets for disaster risk management is an objective process that involves a risk assessment. You assess the disaster risk, and that is specific to the hazard that leads to the particular disaster. So if we are talking about drought, then you will do a drought risk assessment. And that assessment will give you an indication of what it is that you require to do in terms of resilience and preparedness investments, including the early warning systems. And then it will also give you what it will cost you to do response interventions in the event you get to a point where all your capacities are overwhelmed and you are required to do response. So in that case, you have a contingency plan that has to be costed. For the capacity gaps, you have a resilience development plan that is costed. So I would want to say that really, it's not that we don't have resources to do all this. I think what we need is an understanding across the board that disaster impacts all of us, and for whatever role that we are assigned, whatever mandates that we are supposed to execute, we need to factor in the element of disaster risk management into that, so that from the budgets that we have, we deliberately commit resources to invest in preparedness and resilience to the various hazards that we encounter in this country, and they are known. And then we need also to keep in mind that, yes, we will get to a point where we require to respond. Then we must set aside budgets that can quickly be accessed to support response interventions. And again, even with that, it's good manners when you are doing anything to set aside some small budget that can help you in the event of the unforeseen. And ordinarily, it's around 6 to 10% of the budget. Set that aside.
And then when that is exhausted, then you can look outwards to mobilize externally. Are these budgets adequate? No, they are not adequate because the risk assessments that we've been able to do, especially on drought in the different localities in this country, it tells us there is a lot more that we require to invest than the resources that are available can manage. So essentially, progressively, we require to enhance the resources available so that we are investing more in preparedness and resilience, because at the end of the day, it translates to less in terms of the response costs. So the resources are not available, but the mechanisms for defining budgets are there. It is scientifically done in an objective manner. And then the adequacy is another matter altogether. We need to think about that. And that is why, from time to time, you will see government going out to resource mobilize from development partners for purposes of supporting interventions. So, for me, I would say that we need to deliberately think of how we invest in even very mundane mechanisms that mitigate disasters. And some of these are as simple as deciding that instead of doing a crop that is susceptible to drought, then you go for one that is tolerant or can escape, because it's either tolerance or escapism. If it can escape a drought, it means it's maturing faster. If it is tolerant, it means it can survive a drought. And then that includes livestock, where you are doing sheep and cattle. Probably it's time you start thinking of camels. After all, in some of these places where we are forcing cattle to survive, they have become difficult to survive because we have exhausted the carrying capacity with respect to that species. So we need to look at a more resilient species. Probably we shift to camels, we shift to goats. And over time, we give also the land the opportunity to regenerate and recover. Because we've exhausted the vegetation, we've exhausted the water resources, and we are more or less grappling with all that. So budgets, yes, we have budgets. Is it adequate? No, it's not adequate.
Very
I think
well.
that is my response.
Very good. Next, Reza. Thank you very much. I think we are even learning that you can escape drought through farming. Reza.
Thank you very much. Before I comment on carbon markets, I think it's key to speak on something that the viewer online mentioned, that other mitigation options that we have apart from tree planting. And as Vicky mentioned, tree planting has the greatest potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's a given, but it's not the only one. Building on that, the Ministry of Environment released recently the National Climate Change Action Plan for the implementation year 2023-2027 that all of us ought to look at. And many institutions here were represented in the development of that action plan. It was very an inclusive process whereby you gave us interventions that you'll be able to do 1, 2, 3 during this year. For example, KMD say they'll improve their climate information services until that year. So all of us know what we are supposed to do as a sector or institution, and you even gave us budgetary allocations in those interventions. So you already know what you need and what's available in your various institutions and how you can mobilize for the rest. Now, since we are in resource mobilization, this is where carbon markets comes in. It's a greatest potential for us as a country. It's a very complex field, yes, but it's a very, very good potential for us to resource mobilize. And this comes in through carbon project development that every person here can participate in. You just need to know the process of how to come up with a carbon market project and to take yourself through the process of how it can be viable for you to be issued what we call carbon credits, and then you're able to go to the market. All that said, as the ministry, we have amended the Climate Change Act 2016 to incorporate carbon markets. And to operationalize that, we've developed the first subsidiary legislation, that's the Carbon Markets Regulations 2024, that that give us guidance on how you can come from point A to point Z in terms of carbon markets, right? So it's upon us to be aware that the country is ready. We have given you the legal and institutional arrangements for you to participate. And in addition to that, we've designated NEMA to be able to take you through the entire process. So let's leverage on carbon markets to be able to enhance our budgetary allocations. And key to note is that as project developers, they are entitled to give the community a certain percentage as part of benefit sharing. You can see how the community is going to be transformed just based on the regulatory framework that has been put across. And part of the benefit sharing as well will go to the climate change fund, which will be able to address some of the climate adaptation budget issues that you're talking about. So carbon markets, kindly participate. We've already given you the roadmap and the person you can go to ask questions. And I think the key thing that NEMA now has is awareness creation. That needs to hit the ground from now on so that we can all be aware that this is an opportunity for us as a nation to scale up our investments. Thank you.
So Lynette, over to you. You've been requested by your parent ministry to demystify the jargon on carbon trading and carbon participation as individuals. We'll come back to you. I want Mr. Muli to move in to the question. There was a specific question.
Okay. As it pertains now for the control of floods downstream, we think the government that need to be mechanism of doing more flood harvesting structures that will reduce actually the quantity of floods downstream that may affect the people living in Tana River. Also, we need to leverage, the government need to leverage on the flood walls that by constructing levees, there are areas within the water or in the floor of banks of the rivers whereby you can find it is a weak wall or a weak bank. It needs some mechanism or a program to monitor morphological river monitoring to identify weak points where actually the water, even a small floods can actually have a flood in the downstream by stabilizing the river banks, through construction of levees. Again, we need to map out the wetlands downstream, whereby you find some people have encroached the wetland and have started undertaking economic activities within the wetlands. And the wetlands have functions of absorbing or storing water that actually may go and cause negative impact to the community. So by mapping out and conserving the wetlands, will have a very positive impact towards flood control. The other thing is about now looking into and maintaining the oxbow areas. You'll find downstream, the Tana River behaves in a manner that is not straight. It moves this way and that way and that way. And then during floods, it cuts, making a lake. Those lakes, one, stores water and reduces the floods in the farm. Again, those lakes provides an economic activities. For example, River Lake Nile to move with a long way with the water. So you will find where there are those oxbow lakes, there are settlement of those communities, and they benefit when there's floods. When there's no floods, it is actually a famine like any other area. So those areas need to be maintained, conserved, and preserved from economic activities. The other thing is through planting, excessive planting of trees. Like some of us has presented, trees as a function when it comes now to percolations, infiltrations, and the water storage. So when we undertake a massive tree planting, especially in the catchment, of course we'll have lesser floods downstream. So those are some of the mechanisms that the government need to take and prepare to do and support the manage to undertake that activities. The other thing is the communications that we need to communicate to the people who are our target. For example, Tana River, we have Pokomo and we have Oroma, who are dominant of that particular area. When we want to prepare them towards now floods or even drought, we need to communicate to them. And the best communication would be through local dialect, that even the Shosho, the Babu, can hear this message coming in. And how can we go that? We have local radios that we can now disseminate this knowledge to the local person on the ground, that even as the drought comes, he or she is aware this is coming and these are the impact of this drought or these floods. That would be a very good step. Again, we need to develop this one and develop some curriculums that we can communicate to our schools, even in the chief's baraza, where people would come and meet and be sensitized on the precautions that they need to take as they prepare either to floods or either to the drought. For example, now we are talking about floods, but then there's drought coming. We need to speak to them that even the little food that they have harvested, they use it in a good manner, so that they store. There are several local methods of food storage. Even sometimes we may not, and the local person may not be able to buy chemicals, which are somehow are expensive, and somehow, when not used well, are negative, impactful to the human health. But going even to the local food storage methodologies can really save our local community in a big way. That's also, I think, is a very, very important thing that you need to understand. The other thing is about now talking about the livestock. The livestock. You find the livestock that sometimes we keep livestock that feed heavily with little product. Now, when it comes to climate change, you find now the pasture is shrinking with the time as the climate change bites. So what are we going to respond to the local community so that we can improve their livelihoods? We need to come out with a mechanism of the right species and the right pasture that we need to put that are drought resistant and with a high value, nutritive value that can really bring product of value to the community. When it comes to milking, when it comes to now to keeping animals for sale, that will enrich in number of kgs, so that this person, when he takes this livestock to the market, will get high value of income. Again, now, we need to come with education, whereby we touch the community and teach them that even as we prepare for climate change, I mean as in drought, there'll be problem of pasture. Now, if we are going to have a problem of pasture, should we live and watch our livestock die? What can we do? The government needs to come with a mechanism of engaging the community and giving them the right mechanism on how to manage their resources, so that we reduce poverty, we reduce school dropout, we also create employment. Because again, the climate change comes the factor of job cuts. When institutions are closed, when farms are closed, when all those things are closed because of the impacts of climate change. So we need to come and address these issues, talk to the community, prepare them, and make them now adaptive to the issues of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I want to just conclude and indicate that I'll give each of the panelists 1.5 minutes. 1.5 minutes after we have responded to just 2 very burning questions, because this debate We are not able to conclude it now. What we'll do, because this is an issue that we need to address and address continuously, we'll keep the conversation going. And I said earlier, you can use our social media handles, and I'm hoping that in your parting shot, you'll also be able to tell us about your social media handles. And I commit that we will do one network grouping so that we can share ideas and recommend what we need to work as a team. I think in summary, because I don't want to also talk much after we have finished with the 1.5 minutes, issues that have come out here is that, yes, climate change is here with us, but sure, there is action that we can take to mitigate, and it is me and you to do that. Through collaborations, there are many opportunities that are coming up through carbon trading, tree planting, and all the eco-friendly measures that have been mentioned here, through community action, where community action involves community education, community partnership to build a common resilience for all of us, through collaboration, where we support each other with efforts, through request and sourcing for funding, through dissemination of information, including dissemination of information to schools with the change and recommendations for the curriculum. So in simple, I think as Betty suggested, we may want to prolong and have a national drive to simplify climate change issues, to actually also do a call to every Kenyan to take part in the different aspects. So the two burning questions, I saw DG's hand. Is there any other? So it's only one burning question. Yes. And then we'll start with Wambua in terms of responding and utilizing with our 1.5 minute closing remark. Asante. Karibu.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning.
It's not supposed to.
Okay. Mine is just a quick question. And of course, I missed the first part of the meeting. I'll talk later, I think. I'm on the program. So for now, let me speak like a Kenyan. I'm sitting on this side. What is the government doing to tell or inform Kenyans about all the things we're doing here? Yeah? Which is the best crop to plant in Marsabit? Which is the best animal to keep in Kainuk? Which is the best plant to grow in Kajiado? Which is the best animal husbandry plan I can do in Mbere, where I come from? Yeah? So, because I'm hearing a lot of the government we should tell, we should do, but who is government? Who is government? Yeah? Who should provide these answers? So we're here to provide answers. So please tell me, is there a report somewhere in government, in one of your offices, which says, a report which maps the whole country? We are saying we should do a mapping of the country. Has it never been done in 65 years, since 1963? Has nothing been done in this country about disaster preparedness? What has been done? And how can it be improved? Yeah? Jibuni hiyo swali kwanza. Watu wa serikali.
Ressa, I think you yes, but all of us are. Yes, and I think for starters, they had indicated that carefree is now defining species that are proper trees for growing in different areas. And so that you do not then waste a resource by planting a tree that has no chance of survival in a certain area. And I think they've said they have invested a lot in research. I can see Amos is wanting also to respond.
Forest trees and about animals?
Thank you very much. In the drought risk management context, we have mapped the whole country in terms of livelihood zones. And those livelihood zones generally is a summation of what is it that communities in particular localities do, and how does it match similar localities across the country, so that we have a similar message for such zones that have similar characteristics. So in such livelihood zones, which I can name a few, we have those that we call pastoral livelihood zones, where specifically it's pastoralism. Even if we went there, the only thing you will see is animals and the rangeland. And then there are those that are agro-pastoral but marginal agro-pastoral zones, where there is some bit of crops accompanying livestock pastoralism for that matter. And then we have the agricultural zones, the crop production zones, mixed farming zones. We have the fisher folk zones. And all those livelihood zones have their own unique different characteristics. And interestingly, they tend to conform to some sort of climatic realities. And on the basis of those climatic realities, then the drought risk monitoring for them has a similarity. So for that purpose, we are able to monitor drought in those places because we have the monitoring sites, which we call sentinel sites. Data is collected from that, and it's used to analyze and inform how the drought is evolving. Are we going into drought or out of drought? On the basis of that, then advisories are developed. The bulletins are released to stakeholders and the communities to inform what they should do. So in terms of resilience aspects again, now if you are in a pastoralist zone, and over time we've seen that the droughts are becoming more frequent, more intense, and more severe, and even magnitude, in terms of magnitude, they are becoming bigger. Then investments in resilience should be in a manner that you address yourself to those realities. If cattle are failing, then you go to a more resilient livestock species. If maize is not working, as you always see around Gilgil, every year you will see maize being planted, and every year you will see the maize failing. But you can do sorghum in that place, isn't it? So there are government agencies responsible for different mandates. So for those that are responsible for crop production, then they should be able to communicate what is available to cope with the realities of climate change. For those responsible for livestock, the same. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we need also to start thinking about economic engagements that are divorced from climate risk. The livelihood engagements in Kenya, over 70% are sensitive to climate. But then, do we have options out of that? And that's why I like the digital economy. It may not feel whether you are in drought or not, or in floods or not, apart from maybe if the premises are affected. So we need to look in that direction so that while it will take time, but can we see movement in that general direction? Thank you.
So thank you very much. I know the discussion is one that can go on and on and on. Yes, GBS?
Apologies for coming in late, but mine is more of a question. So the president has been out in his state visit to the US. And on Wednesday, he talked about it's time that we see climate change as an opportunity, as not only a challenge. And at the same time, we have the eco-tax, which is already, some players are complaining that it will be curtailing their operations. So my question, I direct it the representative of the State Department for Environment, maybe to talk about what opportunities are the president, is the president talking about, and also how it's going to play out with the proposed eco-tax in the Finance Bill 2024. Thank you.
Okay, I think I would want to recommend that because we had discussed opportunities earlier, including the issues of carbon trading, yeah? There are numerous opportunities. Maybe Ressa will sit with you. I do not think she has an answer about the eco-tax, about batteries. Okay. So we'll research together on that one. So let me spare her from that one. But the opportunities, we have enumerated them. All the speakers have all spoken about.
But briefly, we can say that disasters,
yes,
whether they come from climate change or whatever source,
yes,
they have a nexus with the development. So there is always a disaster development nexus. You go into disaster, you learn lessons from there, as my brother Ayabei said, and out of that, you are better informed on how you develop, you invest in development in a manner that you are able to cope with similar level or even higher level of impacts in the future. So there is that clear nexus between development and disasters.
Yes, there's a lot, immense opportunity in building the resilience in terms of even making money. And I will also have a discussion with you. I'm a bit pressed on time, so our 1.5 minutes, please let's continue the discourse online. We'll be able to also respond. Even in future, we'll still continue. And I said we are reachable ourselves as Vision 2030. We are on Facebook, Kenya Vision 2030. We are on Instagram, KE Vision 2030. We are also on YouTube, Vision 20, Kenya Vision 2030. And on X, at Kenya Vision 2030. So your final remarks, I know you had requested to talk about the consortium, if it can also fit within the 1.5 minutes, so that then we can do the remarks from the DG, so that we can close. We were supposed to have finalized by now. Wambua, we start with you.
My final comment, I would like to maybe to answer what DG said. I don't know, we need to think about why, because research has been done, many organizations, research organizations, and they have disseminated the information. For example, in the zones, the crops to plant or the animals to keep. But even after disseminating the information, we still continue with what we have been doing. For example, the place I come from, we are told not to plant maize, but we still continue planting maize. And every season, we continue failing. So I don't know, we have to think what is the problem. Those are my final comments.
Very well. Thank you, Wambua. You have actually used 1 minute.
Okay, now I wanted to, my final comments are that most people think AWS are the ones who compensate people when we have human-wildlife conflict, but it is the Ministry of, it's the national government through the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. There is a community, it's called Community Wildlife Conservation Committee. It has 4 words. Community Wildlife Conservation Committee. So KWS is a secretary to this committee. So it undertakes its role as a secretary to this committee. That's why when you have human-wildlife conflict, you experience human-wildlife conflict, you report to Kenya Wildlife Service. So that I would want to make clear. And also, as Kenya Wildlife Service, we promote coexistence between human beings and wildlife. We actually don't value like the issue of compensation, but when it comes, we do compensation. But our strategies are aimed at promoting human-wildlife coexistence, and because of some of the shortcomings in the mode of compensation that we currently have, the President launched a different mode of or method of compensation, whereby now we are digitalizing the reporting. Like now, if you experience human-wildlife conflict through your phone, you can just communicate to us, and we are able to process that claim. So that method of payment is being piloted in these counties: Kajiado, Taita Taveta, Narok, Meru, Baringo, and Tana River. And just as a parting shot, today as Kenya Wildlife Service, we are planting trees in the park, so that it will not be good if I end without actually stating that as Kenya Wildlife Service, we also participate in a lot of restoration activities. And in our performance contract, restoration of habitats is under our performance contract because it's a presidential directive. The other thing I want to say as a parting shot is that KWS is very interested in carbon trade. Yeah, in carbon trade, because KWS, we have expansive wildlife conservation areas. And even before these regulations came in force for carbon trade, we already have some projects in the Sambos, in Chulus. So I think we'll be working very closely with NEMA and with Ministry so that we are able to benefit from carbon trade. And remember also, conservancies are protected areas. So we also promote carbon trade in these conservancies as a way of actually them getting something and improving their livelihood. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I said in the beginning, we've just crossed a K-Doctor dip, but there are a few lessons we have learned. Community empowerment is key in all the development activities. No amount of resources, even from the government, even from our development partners, can replace that human resource from the communities. We have seen pastoralists saying initially that we don't want to play God. Kama ni miti, wacha Mungu aendelee. Hiyo ni shauri ya Mungu. After empowerment, these people have said, yes, we can, we have done it, and I'm sure tomorrow we can do it. And so that is a very important lesson we have learned. We have also found that we can turn what we are calling disasters or into into economic use, like floods. We have had the use of flood water. If you go to Okipiti plains in Turkana, you've seen those communities, how they have harnessed the flood water and planted sorghum, which is a product from one of our research stations, the CALO, Kenya Agricultural Research and Livestock and Agriculture Research. So there is a lot that they have been able to get from the so-called disaster in floods. So we are confident that with the collaboration we have talked about here between the communities, between the professionals, and also between the development partners, we can conserve our environment and we can mitigate most of the adverse effect of climate change. Thank you.
Very well. You have kept the time.
One or two. The first one is to say, I really would want to urge everyone to take disaster risk reduction as their business. It's everybody's business for us to be safe today, and if we have to think about the future generation. So we just have to consider that, and alongside do then the tree planting if life is to continue. So if we take it that way, then it's a serious business for everyone. Secondly is that, of course, as Red Cross will remain to play the humanitarian leadership, and if you have some help sometimes that you would wish to pass, then there is that mechanism. You could always reach us and we will be able to work together even in delivering that humanitarian assistance you have or have put together from your office, from your friends, to target a certain community that we can be able to help. So that is in times of response. But most important is how do we help our communities to be more resilient, because there is no dignity in being helped all the time. If we can invest in making people to be self-reliant, to be safe, then we don't need to do that. We can help people to do more on the development angle. I think finally is to adjust the question. I think I'll see the person in charge of issues of carbon credit, because the idea that is there is that even all of us as people who may be affected by disasters, is that what would happen if we are able to plant trees, even on behalf of forestry, where they have space, and maybe my colleague here from KWS, if you allowed us to mobilize and plant so many trees in a certain area, can we get the carbon credit? And that carbon credit becomes premium for disaster response. So we don't get the money. If the disaster hits a place, that credit has paid a premium. Then we will claim that from the insurance and it goes to the people. I think if we do that, then we can be making a more strategic move in benefiting from this tree planting opportunity for the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks very much. I don't know if my two colleagues will have a chance to respond, but just quickly to Daktari. You have a chance to become a carbon project developer as Red Cross, because my colleagues might not have a chance. All that will be required is for you to think and contextualize the carbon project development area that you'd want to venture in, and I think off you go. And these are very interesting perspectives to my colleagues, that this can actually even become premium that can sort out disasters, because it requires resources, a conversation that should be picked up. But you can become the next project developer for carbon. Two, mine were actually really very short. One is to attempt to answer the DG, and I'll say that climate change has taken us to unprecedented frontiers. We had not been here. The people in education didn't think they were affected until children could not go to school, isn't it? People in interior and askaris thought they were safe. People in roads thought it didn't concern them until they require 40 billion to fix roads from the recent floods. What I'm saying, DG, is that this is a new frontier. None of us has been in this space. What I think we need to do, and unfortunately, is that it finds government when we are still operating in silos. Agriculture, their own, forestry, their own, and so forth. And that's why I want to thank Vision 2030 for bringing this conversation alive. We have a National Climate Change Action Plan. You asked for a document. These are things that I think this conversation can help us to set the ball rolling. Maybe in the next conversation, and I really would desire that we keep this going, because you are able in your own way to bring government together. Maybe in the next conversation, we can track the implementation of the Climate Change Action Plan and see with its learnings. So please bring us together. It is a new frontier. We had not been there before. Please bring us together so that the agriculture, forestry, roads, and industrialization can have conversations together, and we keep learning. The last thing I'd want to say, because I know I'm on the line on my 1.5, is what Wangare Maathai said, that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago when she said it. I'm sure now it's 30 or 40. And the next best time is today. So let's go out there and plant as we grapple on how we can come together, solve disasters, and so forth. Let's plant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juliet. My parting shot, I'll speak to the issue of floods, specifically with regard to what the current floods we've had. And there's an online participant who asked about the mitigation plans for the Lower Tana. What is the government doing to mitigate against the floods in Lower Tana? I would want to say that there has been a misconception that floods in Lower Tana are primarily as a result of the Seven Forks Dam. What I want to say is that there are three major catchment areas that bring water to Lower Tana. One is the Mount Kenya and Aberdares, whose water actually is dampened at the Seven Forks Dam. Then secondly, we have the Nyambene Hills. There is Mutonga and Kathita rivers that go direct to the Lower Tana. And then we have the lagers from Kitui that bring in a lot of water into Tana. So that is the situation. And for the mitigation measures, the Seven Forks Dams have played their role in at least dampening the flows from the Mount Kenya and Aberdares. But then there's this plan to build or construct the high Grand Falls dams. When this is done, it will really play a significant role in reducing the impacts of flooding in Lower Tana. There's also a plan to redirect the excess flood water through canal upstream of Garissa into the Fafi swamp. So that one will reduce the floods significantly in the lower basin. My second point is with regard to the climate change. We know that the situation, the extreme events with regard to floods, it is going to escalate. It is only going to escalate. The floods, we expect it to be more intense, and the frequency of occurrence would be more. So, this is an opportunity for us to relook or to rethink our settlement. The flood this time is to the magnitude that nobody expected, and I think we should take the advantage and relook at our settlements. As I said earlier, most of the casualties were those people who had settled in the waterways or the riparian areas. So it's an opportunity for us to relook our settlement patterns, and also for us to rethink of the drainage, management of the drainage within the urban areas. Thank you.
Very well. You've exceeded, but you are answering to a question. So I think Meteorological Department and NEMA, and I think you still promise on that education bit, everybody looks like they still, what Ressa started with, demystifying the procedures of carbon trading and demystifying climate change jargon. I think you have full powers. But your parting shot, I don't know whether, Amos, you want to do a remark in the 1.5 minutes? Yes, so I think we start with Mary.
Okay, thank you. So I'd start by acknowledging that with climate change, weather and climate prediction is also becoming much more challenging, and to also try and answer the question that an online participant had raised, this need for us to continue improving, and we are doing this. For example, we've much more recently improved on the prediction of the seasonal, the short rain season in terms of lead time. It's now possible to reliably predict the season in about 6 months' time. And we continue to do that through collaboration with partners. For example, one of the reasons why the extremes are not very well predicted is because of our understanding of some local processes, which we are looking to see how we can partner with other institutions to do that. So the forecasts, of course, are not perfect, but all the same, you're better off heeding the warnings, because the cost of inaction is a lot more, other than much more than acting in vain. And for that reason, stay safe by heeding the warnings.
Stay safe.
Thank you, Juliet, and thank you for this opportunity for inviting NEMA. Indeed, climate change, carbon trading and carbon markets is an opportunity to us to resource mobilize. Firstly, it enables us to reduce our emission and even meet our nationally determined contributions targets for which we have as a country. So with regards to carbon markets, passing or gazettement of the carbon markets regulation will give a mandate to NEMA as a designated national authority in the regulation of carbon markets. So currently we are in a transitional phase where NEMA is supposed to be gazetted first, so that we can run with our mandates. So, but we will collaborate with our ministry to carry out awareness creation in this new field. And to answer my colleague from Kenya Red Cross, it's beneficial to everyone in the country. That is the project developer, the community around, and the government. There is a percentage in each and every person. So my parting shot is that NEMA is up to task, and we will be able to deliver in that. And please, let's plan, let's implement the strategies, the policies, the plans put in place to address the climate change challenges. Let's also work hard to ensure our environment is clean, healthy, and sustainably managed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From NDMA, I think it's important to reiterate the fact that climate shocks and drought risk are current and worsening realities for Kenya. And even globally, we've seen these events wreaking havoc as far as Brazil, Dubai, Iran, all those places. But we need to take action. The good thing is we have somewhere to start. At NDMA, we are open to partnerships for preparedness and resilience. We are lucky, we also operate the National Drought Emergency Fund, which was established as a part of the broader Vision 2030 aspirations. And much as it has not been funded to the tune that it was envisaged, at least it has some resources that can be harnessed to invest in resilience and preparedness. And all it requires is partnerships. You can come in as a proponent for a project, and you commit a fraction of the resources that you are able to mobilize, and the fund can make available further resources to ensure that projects for resilience and preparedness are realized. We are also lucky that with the support of the European Union, we have access to some resources that can also support preparedness and resilience projects. So while we are talking about concerted efforts for resource mobilization, which we can also do and channel resources into that common basket that is NDEF, National Disaster Emergency Fund, we already have some little resources that can be harnessed immediately, especially for the arid and semi-arid counties in this country, to realize some bit of resilience capacity enhancement. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll not say much. Much has been said, but I'll reiterate on us implementing the policy that we've already put in place, especially the National Climate Change Action Plan 3 that is out there. And I'll also like to read my minister's post today as she accompanies His Excellency the President in the US. All of us as a country and all development partners to support us in implementing the nationally determined contributions. I don't know if some of us have read that document, but it's a commitment from Kenya to the globe that we are aiming to do this and this to contribute to the global efforts in addressing climate change. Also a call for us to implement the third National Climate Change Action Plan, and as everyone has spoken here about trees, the National Landscape and Ecosystem Restoration Strategy, the anchor framework for the accelerated 15 billion national tree growing program. So that's our message today to all of us. And as a ministry, you can reach us through, of course, the Facebook account, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Instagram, Environment and Climate Change, Twitter, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, and of course the website www.environment.go.ke. Thank you.
From the Kenya Meteorological Department. Thank you very much, Lillian, from KWS. Thank you very much, Dr. Mr. Michael from the Kenya Red Cross. Thank you very much, John Karuma from the Kenya Dr. Dip program. Thank you very much, Betty from the Kenya Water Towers. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruben Gessa from Water Resources Agency. Thank you very much, Mr. Wambua from the State Department for Assos and Regional Development. Thank you very much, Mr. Amos Mikhail from the National Drought Management Authority. Thank you very much, Mr. Muli from TADA. Thank you very much, Lynette from the NEMA. And thank you very much once again, Ressa from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. So with that, I think now we want to just give a small clap and welcome the DG for the final remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm John. Very, very briefly, Karibuni Kenya Vision 2030. Welcome to the Secretariat. Protocols, I think, have been done. I normally start my protocols with Wananchi. I like to say that we're here to serve citizens, those of us who are in GOK. So I want to recognize everybody who's online, wherever you are, this country and in diaspora. Karibuni sana, feel at home, feel connected to this country, to this Secretariat here. And then, of course, I want to thank the people who are here. The reason why we set up this Ruwaza Center is because I firmly believe that we have all the answers we need in this country here inside this country. When I look at the list of these eminent ladies and gentlemen who are here, State Department of Environment and Climate Change, TARDA, KWS, National Drought Management Authority, Water Resources Authority, Kenya National Highways Authority, Kenya Met, Kenya Water Towers, NEMA. Who else do we need? Who else do we need? Who else do we need to crack this problem? Who else do we need? Yeah? All the answers are in our heads. All the answers are in the ministries and the departments and agencies, and all the answers are in our heads as citizens. It is our work to think our way out of problems. To think our way out of problems. Yeah, let's think our way out of climate change. Gentlemen there, I think I just mentioned, there's nothing unique about a drought in Kenya. There's nothing unique about floods in Kenya. As we speak right now, there are terrible floods in Brazil, as mentioned, in New Zealand, in Azerbaijan, in where there are floods right now, Brazil, I've mentioned Brazil, Uruguay, New Zealand, everywhere in the world right now, there are floods. Okay? Those of us who are slightly older than others will know that there was famous floods in 1961. True? Famous floods in 1960 what? Was there? I'll tell you the feature. Famous floods in 1961. Famous floods. This one. Is that okay? Very famous floods, I think, in 1968. Very famous floods, El Nino in 1997-98. How many of you are alive in 1997-98 in the room? Yeah, wacheni kujifanya, okay? So these things are cyclical, all right? And they are global. So there's no way we are going to say there will never be a crisis. There will always be a crisis of one kind or another. If it is not floods, it is drought. And that is because we live in a world called the Earth, which is part of the solar system, and there are other things happening around in the solar system. Yeah? Last week, we had a very big event called a solar flare. Who was aware there was a solar flare last week, which almost put out internet services in the world? Okay? We live in a universe. We live in a solar system. There are things which happen. Okay? So we're not going to sit here and mitigate all dangers. What we do is to be prepared. I wanted to mention about, failing to prepare is preparing to? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Okay? So if we don't prepare, obviously, next year, is it going to rain? Is it going to rain later on this year? In October? So if we do nothing between now and October, what's going to happen in October? Same thing. There will be floods, blocked drainage, everything. People can't go to school. The same thing. And then we will meet and say we need an emergency fund. We need to put money together. Serikali's idea. No. We have to break this cycle of Serikali's idea. Let's break the cycle. I want to talk about small actions. Small actions. There's talk about 15 billion trees. The president has put a number there. A number is a good target. It's like Kenya Vision 2030. It's a good target, 15 billion. What does 15 billion mean? 15 billion means you break it down to your level. You break it down to your 2 trees or 5 trees. How many Kenyans are we? 50 million? roughly. Yeah, if you have 5 children, 10 children, plant 2 trees for each of them, you get that number very easily. Let me ask you a question. What's the difference today between Kayole and Muthaiga? What's the difference between Kawangware and Lavington? What's the difference between Umoja and Kilimani? Trees. 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 Yes, there's a small elevation change, but trees create a microclimate. So why isn't everybody in Eastlands planting 2 trees so that you can start feeling like you're living in Muthaiga? Yeah, and Lavington. Why aren't we doing it? Simple, small actions. Yeah, simple, small actions. The whole of Eastlands in Nairobi can decide between now and December we're going to be green. In 5 years, the whole of Eastlands can be green. Can be. All it takes is people living in their courts and wherever they're living to say, let us beautify our court ourselves. Tupandeni miti kwa court yetu. Tupandeni miti kwa plot yetu. That's how big things happen. Big things happen with small individual actions. The problem is when you wait for government to come carrying 15 billion trees in tractors, in lorries, and then you're told line up, kila mtu chukua miti yako 5 endo kapande. That never happens, yeah? So let's take action individually at our own level, wherever you are. Last thing I want to say is that you should have a very good weekend and implement what you've done.
Much. As we did last time in the preparatory meeting, we'll want to take a group photo, and our tea has run into being lunch, so it will be a brunch. Yes? Yeah, so I'm saying that we'll do the group photo, and thank you once again. Let's keep the conversation. We need to do that, the roadshow that you spoke about. Steerers will come, and we'll bring this network of collaborators.
One very last thing.
Check.
Very last thing. To everybody who's watching this program, whether you're in diaspora, abroad, whether you're in Kenya, somewhere, online, whether you're in this room, hold government to account. Hold us to account. If you don't hold us to account, we continue earning our salaries and life goes on. So if you hear there's a national climate change plan, go online, find it, and then ask us questions. Put us to account. Yeah? We are paid to provide solutions on this side of the government, on this side of the table. We are paid to provide solutions. So hold us to account. Yeah? Tell us, there's this thing happening here, why aren't you doing it? Yeah? And here at Vision 2030, ni kitu. Wakenya wanauliza. Yeah? Because we can solve all these problems, we can fix this country. Yeah? It doesn't have to take 50 years, we can fix this country very fast. Sawa?
Sawa. Na kwa hayo tupige makofi moja, mbili, tatu. So we will do the photo here. We'll also have tea or brunch upstairs in the dining room. Asanteni sana. Looking forward to seeing you once again.